I think about that, and it becomes a torrent that enters the flow of a river turbulent by now and clogged with memories and thoughts and ideas that begin to mesh and intertwine. The river begins to seek a place to spill over. When Jonas meets the giver for the first time, he tries to comprehend what lies before him. He says in confusion, "I thought there was only us. I thought there was only now." In beginning to write the giver, I created, as I always do in every book, a world that existed only in my imagination. The world of only us, only now. I tried to make Jonas's world seem familiar, comfortable, and safe, and I tried to seduce the reader. I seduced myself along the way. It did feel good, that world. I got rid of all the things I fear and dislike, all the violence, prejudice, poverty, and injustice. And I even threw in good manners as a way of life because I liked the idea of it. One child has pointed out in a letter that the people in Jonas's world didn't even have to do dishes. It was very, very tempting to leave it at that, but I've never been a writer of fairy tales, and if I've learned anything through that river of memories, it is that we can't live in a walled world, in an only us, only now world where we are all the same and feel safe. We would have to sacrifice too much. The richness of color and diversity would disappear. Feelings for other humans would no longer be necessary. Choices would be obsolete. And besides, I had ridden my bike elsewhere as a child and liked it there, but had never been brave enough to tell anyone about it. So it was time. A letter that I have kept for a very long time is from a child who has read my book called Anastasia Krupnik. Her letter. She's a little girl named Paula from Louisville, Kentucky, says, "I really like the book you wrote about Anastasia and her family because it made me laugh every time I read it. I especially liked when it said she didn't want to have a baby brother in the house because she had to clean up after him every time and change his diaper when her mother and father aren't home, and she doesn't like to give him a bath and watch him all the time and put him to sleep every night while her mother goes to work." Here's the fascinating thing. Nothing that child describes actually happens in the book. The child, as we all do, has brought her own life to a book. She has found a place in the pages of a book that shares her own frustration and feelings. And the same thing is happening, as I hoped it would happen, with The Giver. Those of you who hoped that I would stand here tonight and reveal the true ending, the right interpretation of the ending, will be disappointed. There isn't one. There's a right one for each of us, and it depends on our own beliefs, our own hopes. Let me tell you a few endings which are the right endings for a few children out of the many who have written to me. From a 6th grader, I think that when they were traveling in a circle. When they came to elsewhere, it was their old community, but they had accepted the memories and all the feelings that go along with it. From another, Jonas was kind of like Jesus because he took the pain for everyone else in the community so they wouldn't have to suffer. And at the very end of the book, when Jonas and Gabe reached the place that they knew as elsewhere, he described elsewhere as if it were heaven. And here's one more. A lot of people I know would hate that ending, but not me. I loved it, mainly because I got to make the book happy. I decided they made it. They made it to the past. I decided the past was our world, and the future was their world. It was parallel worlds. Finally, from one 7th grade boy, I was really surprised that they just died at the end. That was a bummer. You could have made them stay alive, I thought. Very few find it a bummer, but most of the young readers who have written to me have perceived the magic of the circular journey, the truth that we go out and come back, and that we come back, and what we come back to is changed, and so are we. Perhaps I have been traveling in a circle too. Things come together and become complete. Here is what I've come back to. The daughter who was with me and looked at me in horror the day I fell victim to thinking we were only us, only now, and that what happened in Oklahoma or Alabama or Indiana didn't matter, was the first person to read the manuscript of The Giver. The college classmate who was different, lives, last I heard, very happily in New Jersey with another woman who shares her life. I can only hope that she has forgiven those of us who were young in a more frightened and less enlightened time. My son and Margaret, his German wife, the one who reminded me how important it is to tell our stories again and again, painful though they often are, now have a little girl who will be the receiver of all of their memories. Their daughter has crossed the Atlantic 3 times before she was 6 months old. Presumably my granddaughter will never be fearful of elsewhere. Carl Nelson, the man who lost colors but not the memory of them, is the face on the cover of this book. He died in 1989, but left a vibrant legacy of paintings. One hangs now in my home. And I am especially happy to stand here tonight on this platform with Alan Say, because it truly brings my journey full circle. Alan was 12 years old when I was. He lived in Shibuya, that alien elsewhere that I went to as a child on a bicycle. He was one of the different, the dark-eyed children in a blue school uniform, and I was too timid then to do more than stand at the edge of their schoolyard, smile shyly, and wonder what their lives were like. Now I can say to Alan what I wish I could have said then. Watashi no komodachi desu. Greetings, my friend. I have been asked whether the Newbery Medal is, actually, an odd sort of burden in terms of the greater responsibility one feels, whether one is paralyzed by it, fearful of being able to live up to the standards it represents. For me, the opposite has been true. I think the 1990 Newbery freed me to risk failure. Other people took that risk with me, of course. One was my editor, Walter Lorraine, who has never, to my knowledge, been afraid to take a chance. Walter cares more about what a book has to say than he does about whether he can turn it into a stuffed animal or a calendar or a movie. The Newbery Committee was gutsy too. There would have been safer books, more comfortable books, more familiar books. They took a trip beyond the realm of sameness with this one, and I think they should be very proud of that. And all of you as well. Let me say something to those of you here who do such dangerous work. The man that I named The Giver passed along to the boy knowledge, history, memories, color, pain, laughter, love, and truth. Every time you place a book in the hands of a child, you do the same thing. It is very risky, but each time a child opens a book, he pushes open the gate that separates him from elsewhere. It gives him choices. It gives him freedom. Those are magnificent, wonderfully unsafe things. I have been greatly honored by you now 2 times. It is impossible to express my gratitude for that. Perhaps the only way, really, is to return to Boston, to my office, to my desk, and to go back to work in hopes that whatever I do next will justify the faith in me that this medal represents. There are other rivers flowing.